Discretion is advised. This is 10-Minute Murder.
On January 6, 2017, a man exited the bathroom near a baggage claim at the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport in Broward County, Florida, and he opened fire. He had a semi-automatic 9mm handgun and 2 clips with him, and he emptied both of these clips before he hit the ground, killing 5 and injuring 6 more people. In the absolute chaos that broke out during the attack, another 36 people were injured, trying to escape the stampeding crowds who were dashing for exits and looking for cover. The shooting was a terrifying shock for the whole country, and perhaps even more so for the family and friends of Esteban Santiago-Ruiz. Esteban was born on March 16, 1990, in New Jersey, but he and his family moved to Puerto Rico when he was only 2 years old. He spent most of his life there and even joined the Puerto Rico National Guard. He was quiet, but well respected. His neighbors used to salute him when they passed him on the streets. In 2010, Esteban was deployed to Iraq as a combat engineer, where he cleared roadside bombs and repaired bridges. But he returned from service a changed man. The sudden and drastic change in his demeanor reportedly stemmed from the time he watched a bomb go off near 2 of his friends in Iraq, an event that those who knew Esteban said stayed with him long after he'd come home. In 2014, he seemed to get a much-needed fresh start when he and his brother moved to Anchorage, Alaska. Esteban joined the National Guard there, and he even met a woman and had a child together. When Esteban's brother moved away from Anchorage, Esteban was a new father and lived in a small but nice apartment with his young family. On the surface, things only seemed to be changing for Esteban for the better. But by 2016, everything had changed all over again. Esteban had gone from a private in the National Guard who had 10 awards from his times in service to a belligerent, troubled man who seemed to be getting more and more violent. He left that small but nice apartment in Anchorage after an alleged attack when he reportedly tried to strangle the mother of his child. From there, he moved into a hotel known for attracting all the wrong sorts of people, and only continued to decline. Neighbors would wake up to Esteban screaming and shouting out of his window in the middle of the night. Sometimes they would find him having arguments with himself in the car park between the motel and the liquor store across the street. He'd just be talking to himself, screaming as if he was having a battle with himself. Naomi Harden, a clerk at that liquor store, told the press. Esteban himself seemed to feel that something was going horribly wrong. He walked into an FBI office in Anchorage and told the staff there that he was hearing voices. These voices, he claimed, came from the United States government, and they wanted him to do things. Sometimes they just ordered him to commit violent acts. Sometimes they wanted him to infiltrate ISIS chat rooms and gather intel on terrorists. Those working at the FBI were, understandably, a little on edge with Esteban's strange confession, especially because he came to the office carrying his infant child. They sent him to a psychiatrist and confiscated the gun that Esteban had a permit for as they waited for the results of his examination. After treatment, the psychiatrist determined that Esteban was mentally fine, and he was discharged. After a further investigation, Anchorage authorities discovered that Esteban had no ties or links to terrorism, and he had not broken the law. They then returned his gun to him. But as a result of his deteriorating mental health and increasingly violent outbursts, Esteban lost his last tether to reality. He was fired from his job as a security guard, which was how he'd been earning a living after being discharged from the Alaska National Guard. Esteban was now officially cut loose. Only a few months later, he booked a one-way flight to Florida and alerted the airport that he would be bringing his gun with him. The permit for his weapon was valid, and he was free to bring the gun as long as he declared it and had packed it in his check-in luggage in a secure case. Esteban followed airport procedures to the T. He even had a military ID on him the day of his travels to further ease any concerns that staff may have. On the other side of his flight, Esteban retrieved his luggage at Fort Lauderdale Airport and went into the bathroom. There, he unlocked the case, put the clip in his gun, and burst out of the room. By his own account, he then started firing at the first people he encountered. The shooting only lasted for about 75 seconds, but Esteban managed to empty both of his clips. He then laid down on the floor near the baggage claim and waited to be arrested. It took only 85 seconds from the start of Esteban opening fire to him being detained, and once law enforcement had him, his confession started almost right away. He told the arresting officers a now chillingly familiar version of events. Esteban said that he was being mind-controlled by the American government, who wanted him to infiltrate online terrorist chat rooms. He couldn't give a clear motive for his attack on the airport or the innocent victims that were there at the time, and, as the Anchorage authorities had already determined, Esteban had nothing to do with online terrorists. He did, however, later confirm that the gun he'd used in the shooting was the very same gun that the Anchorage authorities had returned to him back in 2016. After his arrest, Esteban was diagnosed as a schizophrenic. Had this been picked up on during his treatment in 2016, he would have lost his permit to carry a weapon, meaning that this attack could have possibly been entirely avoided. He improved enough after treatment to be found competent to stand trial, where his attorneys pleaded guilty on his behalf to avoid a potential death sentence. Instead, Esteban was given 5 consecutive life sentences with an additional 120 years to serve in prison, essentially meaning that he will never be released again from prison.
Shut down, all roads in and out closed. There are tens of thousands of passengers who are being told to still remain here and shelter in place, and many of them are panicked and anxious even now after witnessing the horrific deaths here. Just before 1 p.m. as passengers gathered in baggage claim in Terminal 2, shots fired, a chaotic and horrific scene. Bags scattered, frightened passengers and airport workers streaming out, gathering on the tarmac. Officials responding within minutes.
Attention all units, be advised, Comair. A critical incident is being worked on at this time on Tactical Channel 100 Terminal Drive, mass casualty incident.
One witness told us the shooter was relentless.
He continued firing, and I know that at one point he stopped and reloaded and continued firing again.
The Wexler family were headed home to Denver after a Caribbean cruise.
We looked down the end of the terminal and started seeing people running. Figured it might be a good idea to get out of there.
When it was over, 8 wounded, 5 dead. Broward County SWAT teams, deputies, and the FBI swarmed the area immediately looking for the suspect, apprehending him shortly after. 26-year-old Esteban Santiago. His route, he flew on Delta Airlines from Anchorage to Minneapolis and on to Fort Lauderdale, 9 hours in the air. The weapon he used in the attack was in his checked luggage. According to witnesses, after he got his luggage, he then got the gun, loaded it in a bathroom, and began shooting without saying a word. He allegedly reloaded several times. Once he ran out of bullets, he allegedly put the gun down and got down on the floor, waiting for authorities.
We have the shooter in custody. He's unharmed. No law enforcement fired any shots. The subject is being interviewed by a team of FBI agents.
And around 2:30, more chaos. Panic in another terminal, Terminal 1, as passengers there thought they heard more shots. Authorities telling them to evacuate, also to evacuate Terminal 2. People ran outside, falling in the rush to get away. Others, like Callie Hazelgrove, hiding best as she could.
There was another shooting, and we hid behind something like this in the airport for a while, and then we realized everyone else was gone, so we ran outside.
Those already outside running and crouching, taking cover behind cars. Around the same time, reports of a suspicious person in a parking garage nearby. It would later turn out nothing was going on in the garage, and there were no shots fired in Terminal 1. Meanwhile, a complete ground stoppage on all flights in and out of Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. Broward County homicide detectives and the FBI are right now interviewing the suspect. It's unclear if he's answering any of their questions. The leading question, of course, why?
That's 10-Minute Murder for today. Brief and bingeable true crime. I'm Joe, the host, and I really appreciate you listening today. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Make sure you hit subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts, probably where you're listening right now, and connect with me on social media. There, you're going to see the pictures of what we talk about here on the podcast. It's never going to be gross and graphic photos, though. If you like this episode, you like this podcast, leave a rating and review anywhere that you listen if they allow that. Apple, Spotify, Audible, those are a few of the places. Your positive feedback is very much appreciated. Thank you for listening to another 10-Minute Murder episode. I will see you on the next one. Bye.